Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about, in my opinion, the most faithful zodiac sign. And yes, this does apply and pertain to the sun, moon, and ascendant. Well, anyway, people, first sign I'll talk about is Aries. Well, Aries are very single-minded. They're very, they could be very focused. But Aries can be also very impatient, and I think the thing about Aries is if a relationship may lack spontaneity, or there's some kind of excitement missing, there's no activity, it becomes stagnant and dull. Aries may likely take off, and this can manifest in either an extramarital affair. It could just be taking off in the relationship in general, or it could be a combination of both. Aries is a sign that needs their constant excitement, their constant thrills. They like the things to keep moving, to keep going. If there's stagnation in it, then they're likely to take off. I just don't see Aries as the most faithful zodiac sign for the reasons I stated. Now, going to Gemini. Well, Gemini, I think they're actually, sadly, they could be one of the least faithful zodiac signs, because Gemini is just very, they are really very mercurial. They vacillate often. They often are very changeable, and they also can, they can get bored easily in a relationship if it's lacking mental stimulation, if it's lacking activity. Gemini, keep in mind, the symbol of Gemini are the twins. They often, I think Gemini more than the other signs, perhaps on average, actually can feel safer when they have a secondary option in their relationship. In other words, sometimes more than two, maybe two relationships, sometimes going on simultaneously for Gemini, because I think sometimes one just doesn't seem to be enough for them. They need to have that variety and that extra stimulation. So for those reasons, I don't really see Gemini as being the most faithful zodiac sign. So anyway, getting to the zodiac sign Cancer. Well, for Cancer, Cancer can actually be very loyal and devoted and dedicated, because Cancer is very tenacious, and they could apply that tenacity in a relationship situation. However, though, for Cancer, Cancer can also be very temperamental and moody, and they can also snap a little bit quick because they are so sensitive. Cancer can be sensitive to ridicule and criticism, but sometimes even unintentional slights, or even something where they could have a partner that might just be, talking to somebody, and they might take it the wrong way and think the person's being flirtatious or trying to come on to the other person. Sometimes they'll make a mountain out of a molehill a little bit, Cancers. My sun sign is Cancer, so I understand a lot about this in a way. And the thing about it is, if Cancer, being as moody as they are, if they just don't feel like being involved with someone anymore, they might just say, well, you know what, that's basically it. It's time to go. Or if they've gotten their feelings hurt too many times, you know what, they're like, see you, don't want to be as. So anyway, the next sign I want to talk about is Leo. Now, Leo, I think, is actually one of the most faithful signs of the zodiac. They're very loyal, generous, magnanimous. They're really often about the fine art of reciprocation. If somebody helps them, that they want to reciprocate in return, and they show that attitude in way of being in relationships as well. But the thing about Leo, what I think can hurt them in terms of their relationships and their dedication to it, is the fact that they do have a fiery temperament like Aries, of course, and perhaps they can get mad, even though they can get mad a little quicker than the other zodiac signs. Most of the other zodiac signs on average, they're not vengeful or vindictive. They're not going to hold a grudge generally. But the fact is, in some cases, if they get, they have something happens, and they can become really angry or acerbic, and they say, they might say, enough. That they might take off on a whim because of that. But I think in other situations, what it is strongly with Leo it's not really mainly the temper thing that could get the better of them. That because with Leo, I mean, Leo wants to be entertained. They don't get their entertainment and amusement from their partner. I think they can leave a little bit quicker than the sign I'm going to talk about later on. And also, Leo is strongly connected with pride. And if their pride is hurt, that's when they might say, you know what, I'm going to go. Leo can be very loyal and steadfast to a certain degree in a relationship. But the thing about them is, if somebody gets one up on them, maybe one too many times, whether it's in an argument or what have you, somebody, the partner, the significant other emerges victorious. Leo's pride, it could be so hurt that they might just say, okay, that's it. I'm just going. It might be, if it's something like that, that they might not be able to handle. And so anyway, so I don't see Leo as the most faithful zodiac sign. They could be close, but I just don't quite get, they don't get the cigar, so to speak, for it, in my opinion. Now I'm going to go to Virgo. Well, Virgo is a sign, okay, I mean, they're known for their punctuality, their reliability and dependability. They have the potential to be very loyal in a relationship. However, keep in mind, Virgo is a mutable sign, so there can be certain changeability with them, not nearly to the extent as Gemini, but they can have certain changeable qualities in them. I think they are ones where, I mean, I think what it is about Virgo is that a lot of times, despite being a mutable and adaptable sign, they can be very judgmental, very picky, particular, and it can apply to the person that they're involved in a relationship. And maybe what it is that a lot of times that the other person can't live up to his or her expectations, and because Virgo is just such a sign that is so, I mean, they really could have very, I mean, despite being a mutable sign, I think they could have very high standards for well, for someone. They want that person to be as scrupulous as they are in how they act, in their way of being, whether it's in also being clean, they want the partner often to be very meticulous, and they really, and if they even see something that really, you know, even a light flirtation that maybe a partner might show to somebody else, or they might be being, the partner may be being flirtatious with someone else, they could take it really more strongly, I think, than you would think, because Virgo often is about being very proper, and if the other person isn't acting that way in what's proper in their estimation, they'd be like, okay, I'm gone. So I think for those reasons, it's hard to see Virgo as the most faithful sign, because they just, I think a lot of them are just way too fault-finding and critical to be able to stick in the relationships for the long haul because of that. So anyway, going to the zodiac sign Libra. Well, Libra, I mean, is the sign of relationships. I mean, I think with Libra, they're very fair, they're very equitable. They just basically want, you know, they want to give a certain amount, but they want to be able to take a certain amount as well. They say what's fair is fair. But the thing about Libra is, okay, Libra can have very refined taste. They're very charming. They often can, they can often make very great people in relationships. But the thing about them is there's a little bit of a flirtatious quality with them. There's also a little bit of a superficial quality with Libra as well, I believe. And I think for that reason, it's hard for them to often stay committed into the relationship and loving as deeply as some of the other signs go. So I think for those reasons, it's harder maybe for them to stay faithful as much as some of the other signs may be able to do so. And Libra often, I mean, it's a lot of it has to do with the fact that Libra is that sign of the scales. Libra is not a dual sign, not a mutable sign. Libra, of course, is a cardinal sign, but they could still be, because those scales, they really can be somewhat ambivalent and indecisive. they might have trouble sometimes deciding between one person and another in terms of a romantic relationship, having a significant other or what have you. And I think that's what makes it sometimes difficult for them to be really strongly stable in relationships. So I don't think Libra is the most faithful zodiac sign. So anyway, getting to Scorpio. Well, for Scorpio, okay, Scorpio is a fixed sign, and Scorpio can actually have a very strong ability to be very loyal and persistent in a relationship. But the thing about Scorpio is Scorpio can be, they're not just obsessive and fixated, they could be very jealous. And sometimes if Scorpio is scorned, and even whether the other person cheats or not, or simply just talks to somebody and is flirtatious with someone, Scorpio may become really very infuriated by this. And in some cases, I think it can lead for them to go, I don't want to say a sexual frenzy with others, but I think they would have that propensity to cheat because of that, because of how the other partner might be acting, and whether the partner is apathetic or becoming disinterested. That's when Scorpio would feel that need to cheat, or if they're scorned somehow by their lover, and they might feel, well, if a partner cheats, they might want to even the score, because Scorpio, of course, could be very vindictive and vengeful, I think more so than the other zodiac signs. And I think it goes without saying, and it can apply to relationships as well, love and romantic relationships, sexual relationships. So anyway, so I don't see them as being the most faithful zodiac sign, but they can have potential to be one of the most. So anyway, going to Sagittarius. Well, Sagittarius, immutable sign, they're very adventurous. They can be flighty and also very much about exploration. And this can apply to their romantic love, sexual relationships as well. Sagittarius, Gemini is about mentally being pinned down, but I think Sagittarius, it's more of a physical nature. Sagittarius often wants to wander, to meander, to roam. And they often, like Gemini, though, they can get bored, I think, with one person more often than the average sign on average. So I think for those reasons, the fact that Sagittarius can often be very travel-minded, and if they're traveling, and especially if they're by themselves, I think that could create, of course, more opportunity for a propensity to cheat, or whether it's cheating and or leaving the significant other. I think that's part of the thing with Sagittarius, what makes it hard for them, at least in my opinion, to be the most faithful zodiac sign. So I say no to Sagittarius as far as that goes. Next sign. As far as Capricorn goes, well, Capricorn certainly has potential to be devoted, dedicated. They could be very tenacious and persistent. They are often about consistency, and this can apply to their relationships as well. But I think because of that consistency, they might have that expectation for the other person to be that way as well. And also, Capricorn, can come across to a lot of people as a little bit callous or undemonstrative. And I think what happens is when a person gets a little bit too clingy with them and they're overly emotional, they could have some difficulty in dealing with that because they don't strongly express their emotions that well. So I think, and then I think because of that, Capricorn may have that tendency to leave the relationship at that, if it becomes like that. So I think for these reasons, also coupled with the fact that Capricorn is often dominated by their career matters. And I think because of that, I think what happens with some Capricorns, maybe more so than the other zodiac signs on average, is that they get so tied up in their business and their career that they may feel that they don't have what it takes to be able to stay in that sustained relationship at times. And I think they sometimes may take off because of that because of that reason, or maybe if somebody's not taking the relationship as seriously as they are, because they are very serious. So at that time, Capricorn may cheat and or just leave the relationship entirely. Now, going to the zodiac sign Aquarius. Well, Aquarius is very interesting. They're a fixed sign. They can be very loyal with the right person, but the thing about Aquarius is, like Sagittarius, Aquarius is about their freedom, and they don't want their freedom inhibited. It's not so much about being physically not wanting to be physically tied down like a Sagittarius, but Aquarius is just more about their general freedom and independence, and not wanting to be in a situation where somebody is dictating the course of action or being tied down to a certain, like a regimented schedule, so to speak. Aquarius wants to do their own thing in their own time, and Aquarius energy can be somewhat unpredictable and erratic and sporadic, and for these reasons Aquarius energy is such where it's hard for me to see them as being the most faithful sign. They are, like I said, they can be unpredictable. They're very much about spontaneity, and keep in mind too that Aquarius, at least in my opinion, I think is the smartest zodiac sign on average. They are ruled not just by Saturn, but they're ruled by Uranus, of course. And Uranus is the higher octave of Mercury. So I'd see Aquarius as being the smartest sign. And I think what I'm getting at with this, people, is that if they don't have somebody that's at their level in terms of being cerebral and in their intellectual ability is not competitive, that could be a reason for them to either leave the relationship or cheat. So I think for these reasons, it's hard for me to see them as the most faithful zodiac sign. Now, getting to Pisces. Well, Pisces, the thing about Pisces is that, okay, it's a mutable sign, it's very changeable. For those reasons, it makes it difficult for me to say that they're the most faithful zodiac sign. They are, they're very fickle, very changeable. They also, the thing about Pisces too, is the fact that, you look at this sign, they are ones that I think are also, out of all the signs, they have a little greater propensity toward the alcohol, toward the drugs, and it makes them, and that right there, that could give some instability in their nature. And I think and it's not just that, I'm not saying, most Pisces may not be about that, but another thing about Pisces is that they can also be rather nebulous, rather confused. Sometimes they have confusion over maybe one person or another in terms of to stay with, and who they want to stay with in terms of a relationship. Sometimes they have trouble making a decision. So sometimes for Pisces, they may go for a protracted period, maybe without that relationship, because they just don't really sometimes have that direction to even decide which way to go. And they and I think too with Pisces, if those people, Pisces is very, they might be very adaptable, very malleable, don't get me wrong, but they want their fantasies met often. They're very idealistic. I think if a person is not matching them, especially on a sexual level, making their fantasies come true that way, then that might be that time where they may either cheat or they may decide to leave the relationship all together. I think what happens is with Pisces, what makes them, in my mind, it's hard pressed for me to see them as the most faithful zodiac sign, because Pisces, being so idealistic, they may put their standards or expectations very high for that significant other, that person they're in the romantic love relationship with or what have you. And a lot of times those people may not meet them. And what happens is it leaves, when Pisces finally realizes what's going on and I mean, in that they're not meeting those expectations. I mean, Pisces can sometimes be very delusional. They might think, well, this person is such and such, and they're not quite what, you know, they find out later on they're not quite what they had measured them up to be. So I think what happens is Pisces, when they realize that, they become hurt, they become devastated, and then they leave, because I think a lot of people just won't meet the Pisces kind of ideal, so they either wind up cheating or taking off as or taking off, leaving the relationship as a result. So anyway, last but not least, so I'm going to get to the sign that I think is the most loyal, I should say most faithful zodiac sign, and that sign I believe is Taurus. Taurus, okay, is a fixed sign. It's an earth sign. Taurus can be very stable, solid. They're very steady and consistent, loyal and steadfast. They are actually, I mean, being fixed and earth, it gives them that very strong stability, very unwavering energy. Taurus is really strongly about perseverance, and they often will apply that in a relationship. Sadly, though, many Taurus people will actually stay in a relationship that might be detrimental to them. I mean, I have Taurus rising, and I know I have sometimes done that. And people ask, well, why is it that Taurus will do that? Well, it's really because a lot of it is it's a good question, and the answer to that is a lot of that is attributed to the fact that Taurus, what they look at in their mind is the fact that, well, that the effort maybe outweighs the reward. Maybe they think that, well, this effort, it's going to be such an arduous task to do what I have to do to leave this person, to extricate myself from this relationship, and then might not have anything for a while after that. They figure, well, this is better than nothing. I think the fact is, in many solar natal charts for Taurus, Aries will often fall on the 12th house cusp. And the 12th house is about restrictions and limitations. With Aries being on there often, well, the thing is, Aries is very action-oriented, being ruled by Mars. So you get the idea. Taurus can often have hesitancy and difficulty in taking action. In any kind of initiation, Taurus often doesn't have very strong enterprise, and it could be taking action in terms of leaving a negative relationship. But Taurus will often stay through relationships, through their trials and through tribulations, because Taurus, being fixed earth, they're very steady and stable, and they're very stagnant as well. Taurus people generally can be very unwavering and unmoving, and this can apply to their relationships as well. And I think Taurus is sometimes so loyal to a fault, they don't even stay. They part of the reason they stay in their relationship, even if it's something to their detriment, or they're dealing with a lot of negative energy from the other person, or the person's saying a lot of derogatory things to them and not treating them well, etc. They stay in it anyway because they almost feel like there's this obligation to stay with them, even when you can make such a strong argument in a lot of those cases where it's not justified for Taurus to leave. So, I mean, where it is justified for Taurus to actually leave, maybe it's a confidence thing in Taurus with some issues. Keep in mind, Taurus is a feminine sign. It's more pessimistic than it is optimistic. Maybe they feel, I think most Taurus people feel that they don't deserve that, but it just makes you wonder at times what's going on. You know, it really is to other reasons as to why they're staying in these those relationships inexplicably. A lot of it too. Another thing I want to talk about as far as that goes is that Libra often falls on the 6th house cusp in a solar natal chart for Taurus. And because of that, I mean, keep in mind the 6th house represents our daily routine. Relationships can still be in the daily routine, the people that we see on a day-to-day basis. And I think what it is, Libra is often like kind of complacent and relaxed energy. And for that reason, I think Taurus makes it hard for them to end or terminate certain relationships, unlike Scorpio. Remember that Scorpio is the opposite sign of Taurus. And that Scorpio, even though Scorpio is a fixed sign, people, the thing is, Scorpio has a little better ability to obliterate relationships, to end them. Scorpio is a sign associated with death. It's a lot about figurative death and endings for Scorpio. And they have a little better ability to do that than Taurus. I think a lot of it's attributed to the fact that it is the opposite sign of Taurus. And that's why Taurus has a lot of trouble doing what Scorpio is actually able to do a lot easier. But what happens is when Taurus does leave a relationship eventually, when enough is enough and when they've reached their point of endurance, that will be it. Sometimes they won't, a lot of times they won't say anything. They won't give you, and I think sometimes with some Taurus, they won't give you any indication what it is. You could just wake up one day and that person will be gone. They say, you know what, I'm not going to, this person doesn't even deserve a goodbye. I don't know if many of you may have seen, there was a song sung by Glenn Campbell, legendary country music singer. And I don't remember the exact title. It might have been By the Time I Get to Phoenix or something similar to that. In the song, he talked about how he took off and left somebody. And he didn't really, I think he left a note, he said in the song. But Glenn Campbell had his sun in Taurus and moon in Taurus. And I guess the point I'm making is that sometimes when enough is enough, Taurus may go. And I know he was just singing a song, and it may have likely been written by somebody else. But I think sometimes people that, singers can sometimes be connected with songs, whether they wrote them or not, that might correspond with certain actions and characteristics that are of their astrology signs. So anyway, well, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment for the most faithful zodiac sign. And stay tuned next time, where I'm going to be giving you my Aries December 2017 horoscope forecast. Two things I want to get with you on before I head out. Firstly, the stars may impel but do not compel. And secondly, never isolate any single astrological element, aspect, planetary placement, position, configuration, influence, or what have you, and make an analysis of a person, astrologically speaking, based on this alone, because astrologically speaking, the person is the sum of all their components in their natal chart, and not just one. Until next time, people, stay well.